Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Amal Jayawardena. So my topic is causes and consequences of Biafran War. Well, you might be wondering what is this Biafran War, because it's pretty much, I guess, unfamiliar for Sri Lankans, because this is actually a war that fought in far western Africa, and in other words, it is also called the Nigerian Civil War, which actually fought from 1967 to 1971. So my aim is not to just give a clear-cut analogy between this Biafran War and the Sri Lankan situation, but I will be trying to, just draw some lessons from the Biafran War, and especially the post-war situation of the Biafran conflict. Right. So Biafra was the Biafran movement was actually a separatist movement towards a separate state called Biafra. And you can see the picture where's the Biafra is, and so historically Nigeria is divided into three regions based on ethnicity, and so these are the main three regions in Nigeria if we divide in terms of ethnicity. So the northern region is mostly dominated by Muslims, and there are two southern regions, the eastern southern and western southern, and eastern southern region is dominated by Christians, and the western southern region actually dominated by the traditional religious groups. So what conditions led to the emergence of this Biafran War and how it started? Well, there are some similarities with Biafra and with the Sri Lankan context as well. Well, it is also a protracted social conflict, if I am to use the Edward Azar's terms. So in protracted social conflicts, the roots of such conflicts go towards colonial legacies, especially the colonial policies, mainly the divide and rule policies of the colonial master. So Nigeria was also colonized by the Britishers, and what is interesting here is when colonizers when they ruled those countries, and when they were using the governance method of divide and rule, they made sure that they favor the minorities. So in Nigeria, the colonial masters made sure that they give more opportunities towards the southerners, the Christian southerners, instead of Muslim north. But when they left the country with giving democracy to that country. I mean, to many colonial countries, when they left, they gave democracy. So once the democracy is there, in most of the countries, they got their majority coming into the political mainstream, and they decide the state affairs based on their norms and values. So however, my argument is that the diversity is actually not a source of conflict, but when it is politicized by the structure of governance, then it becomes a source of conflict, especially when they are mismanaged by the governance structure. So the colonial governance structure really granted the seeds of strong identity politics in Nigeria, which eventually led to the hegemony of the majority in the post-colonial period. basically in decolonized countries, the politicization could happen in two ways. Once the majority gets the power, they decide what to do because they have huge power with democracy, because they are the ones who impose their norms and values. So one way of doing is they could equally assimilate or absorb the minorities or other ethnic groups to the state, irrespective of their ethnicity, religion, caste, or class. But as we see in most cases, we saw even in Sri Lanka as well, unequal assimilation, where we assimilate minorities as second class or third class citizens in most cases. For example, if I am to say in 1956 we gave priority to Sinhala language, and Buddhism was also given priority. Now, if you are assimilating citizens equally to the state system, you cannot give priority because all should be equal. So even though Nigeria was a federal state at the beginning of its decolonization, the northern majority, the Muslims, they try to influence their policy. And for example, they try to implement the Sharia law in other regions as well. So this is a clear example of their unequal assimilation. So through interconnectedness of ethnic, religious and regional differences, identities are constructed continuously. So this identity formation is not only primordial, but it is a continuous process, because once the structure, the governance structure supports, that could lead to recreation or continuous creation of identities. So dormant identities today can become very active in tomorrow if the structure supports for them to politicize themselves. So this is again to remind you how Nigeria was divided through main ethnic divisions. The northern part is Muslim and Catholic south, and traditional south east region. So northern Nigeria is more or less ethno-religious region in comparison to the ethnic south, since the northern part is dominated by the Muslims. So most of the clashes or divisions or ethnic cleavages started with the denial of access to resources in federal structure. When structures denied the robustness of identities in an already politicized context, then it can generate levels of conflict. So as a result, the most of the Nigerian, when you ask what is your identity, they will rather tell you about their ethnic identity instead of their other identities. So that's how they are deeply divided.